We'll begin tonight with the New Year message of President Bola Tinubu. The president has pledged to consolidate Nigeria's recent economic gains in 2026 while focusing on building an inclusive and growth-oriented economy. While delivering his New Year address, the president said Nigeria ended 2025 on a strong footing with robust quarterly economic growth, with inflation declining steadily to below 15%. He added that the Nigerian Stock Exchange also outperformed its peers, posting a 48.12% gain, as the government targets further inflation reduction and broader economic benefits for households in the new year. In a related development, Nigeria has begun the implementation of its much-anticipated new tax laws and fiscal reforms amid widespread public anxiety. President Tinubu on Tuesday reaffirmed that the new tax regime signed into law in June 2025 would take effect on January 1, despite repeated calls from various quarters for a suspension to allow for further review. Defending the reforms, President Tinubu assured Nigerians that the new tax laws would not impose additional burdens on citizens. But some Nigerians would not buy that, as leading opposition figures have kicked against the commencement of the new tax reforms. The National Association of Nigerian Students, National Chairman of the African Democratic Congress, Senator David Mark, and Labour Party Chairman, Senator Nnamdi Usman, were among those who spoke against it. Their outcry follows the High Court of Abuja's move declining to restrain the federal government from going ahead with its January 1 timeline for the implementation of the same. Femi Onakanren is an economist. He joins me now for a deep dive into the president's New Year's speech as it relates to economic forecast in 2026. Thank you for being here. How do you envisage the president's plans to balance inflation reduction with job creation in the context of Nigeria's current economic challenges?
Well, the comforting thing about the speech by the president is that it highlights the very important, significant gains we've had as a country, especially on the economic front. It is undeniable that GDP has increased. It's undeniable that inflation has reduced. It's undeniable that foreign reserves have also improved, and that foreign investments have also improved. So these are critical gains and some of the things that we've been looking at. It also cannot be discounted that the liberalization of the country from the subsidy chokes and burden has actually created immense wealth for subnational governments. So I think also that that's a step in the right direction, as well as the harmonization of FX rate. All this comes together to say that 2025 was a very good year in terms of economic progression for Nigeria. Not where we would love to be in the immediate, but it's a stepwise, consistent process. In terms of consolidation, that is the real job for 2026. 2026 poses first, a political challenge in terms of the import on economic policies and fiscal application. We would like to see a reduction of politicization of common good positions and policies, and just a focus on economic growth, which is primarily what everybody else is running on and pushing out. We would like to see clearer communication regarding the tax reforms implementation. Some of the issues that were raised in recent times about the gazetted copy being different from the one presented to the president and all that, there has to be a clearer position. It's an investigation going on by the National Assembly, but at the same time, we think that the presidency also needs to come out a bit and provide some clarification. Aside from clarification, there is an urgent and very imperative need for clear communication. The social media is awash with a lot of different narratives regarding the tax reforms and its implementation, and some of the other policies that the government is planning to implement. If the public is not carried along, even if you have very bold, progressive ideas, if you don't have the buy-in of the people, it becomes a lot harder to consolidate whatever gains we had in 2025. Thankfully, we've seen some progress on the security front as well. So it appears that Nigeria is moving in the right direction. But the consolidation plan, earmarked in the midterm economic framework, is also very important to be communicated to the people. People need to understand how this impacts their life, what they tend to gain, what opportunities are being created in terms of job creation. The president talked about 1,000 people across different world, about 8,000 words in the country, creating gainful employment. We need to see the action steps, guiding this, the implementation. We need to see the harmonization of our agricultural support policies such that we can move more towards mechanized farming and improve productivity and food sufficiency.
Clarification, a lot of explanation, a lot of carrying the people along is important with any policy he intends to bring out. But let's talk about one in particular. He has pledged to empower at least 1,000 citizens in each of Nigeria's over 8,000 wards through the Renewed Hope agenda, with, I think he says, it's 8.8 million people in 2026. From an economic standpoint, how visible is this in terms of funding, implementation, capacity, and measurable impact?
Well, the critical thing is there's a play between economics and English, right, in the presentation. And that is, what do we mean by empowerment? Empowerment, the indices that demonstrate what empowerment means would actually help us to quantify the import, the significance, and the consequences, that may arise from such a development. If the framework is not clear enough, if we cannot objectively and productively ascertain that these are productive matrices that we're measuring, that we're following, and we're going to assess the progress promised by, then it becomes a bit of a stretch, a bit of a political statement, if I may use the term. Because the truth is, if we have about 10 million people empowered, right, across the country, it means that they should also be able to create additional jobs and dependencies by margins of degrees of separations, maybe like 2, 3. So we're talking about like 20, 30, 40 million people being directly and indirectly impacted. Now, this presupposes that the activities that they're being empowered on are driven by productive ventures that create economic value. So that is what we need to be clear about. What is the framework for this empowerment? How do we define this empowerment? What are the metrics that we're going to measure, right? The progress and, monitor the effectiveness by. Those are the critical issues. But empowerment can be anything. I could give out 1,000 naira to 1,000 people. That's 1 million naira, and I say I've empowered 1,000 people, but it does not really articulate it.
Yeah. Should the term empowerment be expunged from speeches from the president in particular, considering that measuring its impact and effectiveness might be tricky? And doesn't this open room to further scrutiny and skepticism as to the sincerity of whatever plans or policies he wants to implement through empowerment?
Well, the truth is not a one-sided position. The truth also is that we must understand our political literacy in the country, our economic literacy in the country. There are certain words and certain terms that have a buzz effect, and sometimes they energize even beyond the quantified inputs themselves. So empowerment, right? Whatever the president does in terms of policy initiatives, in terms of frameworks development, whatever proposal programs, they are all empowerment initiatives. They are all to empower people.
Femi, you know exactly what I'm referencing. I'm not talking about the generality. I'm talking about his specifics of empowering 1,000 people in over 8,000 wards across the country. And that's where I'm a bit concerned. But let's look at something more pertinent, and that's the claim that Nigeria recorded robust quarterly GDP growth in 2025. with annualized growth expected to exceed 4%. In your view, given Nigeria's economic structure and external headwinds, are these projections realistic, and do they translate into real improvement in living standards? It still ties back to the question I asked about clarity on the need to expunge the use of empowerment.
Empowerment is a regular word, so it's neither here nor there. What we're just looking at productivity indices to follow. But regarding what you said about the the GDP growth, these were not mythical figures that were created in in some policy units. These were economic indices that were measured against actual data and progression of the economy. So yes, the country did grow by about 3.8%, 4% growth annualized, which is really quite good considering where we're coming from and some of the headwinds we have to challenge, both locally and globally. So we can build on it. There's a firm conviction with the fiscal policies, that the framework, the monetary policy management framework, that we can make significant progress and build on the projection has been laid down already. But we achieved the 3.8, 4% GDP growth rate in
a mix of skepticism and optimism from you, which is a fair balance. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and Happy New Year to you and the crew.
Happy New Year.